Article 1. The Psychology of Memory Retrieval. Memory is often conceived as a static repository of past experiences, but contemporary cognitive psychology presents it as a dynamic, reconstructive process. Rather than simply retrieving an exact copy of an experience, individuals actively reconstruct past events using fragments of stored information, contextual cues, and personal expectations. This adaptive nature of memory allows humans to interpret and respond flexibly to the world, but also makes it susceptible to distortions and inaccuracies. One key factor in memory retrieval is the presence of retrieval cues, stimuli that trigger access to specific memories. These cues can be external, such as a familiar scent or a song, or internal, like a particular emotion. The encoding specificity principle posits that memory recall is more effective when the context at the time of retrieval matches the context during encoding. For example, a person might struggle to recall a fact studied in a quiet library while in a noisy classroom, even though they knew it well in the original setting. Another important aspect of memory retrieval is the concept of state-dependent memory, which extends the role of context to one's physiological and emotional state. Studies have shown that people are more likely to remember information when they are in the same mood or physiological condition as when they learned it. This phenomenon has significant implications for therapeutic practices, especially for individuals with mood disorders, where memory accessibility might fluctuate based on emotional state. The reliability of eyewitness testimony has long been a subject of scrutiny in legal contexts, and the reconstructive nature of memory is central to this debate. Research demonstrates that people can incorporate misleading information into their recollections if they are exposed to suggestive questioning or false post-event information, a phenomenon known as the misinformation effect. This has led to changes in how law enforcement and legal professionals handle witness interviews. Memory retrieval is not only shaped by external cues and states, but also by the brain's intrinsic organization. Neuroimaging studies reveal that different types of memory, episodic, semantic, procedural, are supported by distinct neural circuits. The hippocampus plays a crucial role in episodic memory, allowing individuals to mentally travel back in time and relive personal experiences. In contrast, semantic memory, which stores general knowledge, engages broader cortical regions, while procedural memory relies heavily on the basal ganglia and cerebellum. Memory consolidation, the process by which temporary memories are transformed into stable long-term ones, also influences retrieval. Sleep has been found to be a critical factor in this process. During sleep, especially in slow-wave and REM stages, the brain replays and strengthens neural connections related to recently learned information. This may explain why a good night's rest can enhance recall and learning, while sleep deprivation often leads to poor memory performance. In some cases, memory retrieval can become involuntary and intrusive, as seen in post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD). Traumatic memories can resurface suddenly, often triggered by seemingly unrelated stimuli, leading to distress and disruption. These flashbacks highlight the potency of emotional memory and its resistance to typical forgetting mechanisms. Understanding the neural mechanisms behind such intrusive memories is a major area of research, with potential implications for treatment interventions. On the other end of the spectrum, certain memory retrieval strategies have been developed to improve recall in both academic and everyday contexts. Techniques such as spaced repetition, retrieval practice, and elaborative encoding have been shown to enhance long-term retention. Spaced repetition involves reviewing material at increasing intervals, while retrieval practice encourages actively recalling information rather than passively rereading it. These strategies take advantage of the brain's natural consolidation and retrieval processes. The plasticity and fallibility of memory underscore its complex nature. While often treated as a factual record, memory is more accurately described as a malleable construct shaped by biological, emotional, and environmental variables. This understanding not only challenges traditional assumptions about memory accuracy, but also opens avenues for enhancing learning, therapeutic interventions, and even legal reforms. Article 2. The function and structure of enzymes in biological systems. Enzymes are biological catalysts that accelerate chemical reactions without being consumed in the process. These macromolecules are typically proteins, although some RNA molecules, known as ribozymes, can also exhibit catalytic properties. Enzymes are vital to life because they allow cellular reactions to occur at rates sufficient for biological processes. Without enzymes, most biochemical reactions would proceed so slowly that they would be incompatible with life. Each enzyme is highly specific, acting on a particular substrate or group of related substrates. This specificity is determined by the enzyme's three-dimensional shape, particularly the configuration of its active site, the region where substrate binding and catalysis occur. The lock-and-key model was once used to describe this interaction, suggesting that substrates fit into the enzyme much like a key fits into a lock. However, more recent research favors the induced fit model, which proposes that enzymes undergo a conformational change upon substrate binding, enhancing the fit and catalytic efficiency. Enzymes lower the activation energy required for a reaction to occur. This is achieved not by providing energy, but by stabilizing the transition state, an intermediate arrangement of atoms that forms during the conversion of substrates into products. By reducing this energetic barrier, enzymes significantly increase the rate at which equilibrium is reached. This catalytic role is central to metabolic pathways in cells, where hundreds of enzymes operate in tightly regulated sequences to maintain homeostasis. The function of an enzyme is influenced by various environmental factors, including temperature, pH, and the concentration of substrates or inhibitors. Each enzyme has an optimal temperature and pH at which it functions most effectively. Deviations from these optimal conditions can lead to decreased activity or even denaturation, a process where the enzyme's structure is irreversibly altered. Inhibitors, either competitive or non-competitive, can also reduce enzyme activity by interfering with substrate binding or altering the enzyme's shape. Enzyme kinetics, the study of the rates of enzyme-catalyzed reactions, provides insights into how enzymes work under different conditions. One of the foundational models in this field is the Michaelis-Menten equation, which describes how the rate of reaction depends on the concentration of substrate. The equation includes two key parameters, the maximum rate of the reaction, Vmax, and the Michaelis constant, Km, which reflects the substrate concentration at which the reaction rate is half of Vmax. These parameters help researchers understand enzyme efficiency and affinity for substrates. Many enzymes require non-protein components for activity. These cofactors can be metal ions, such as magnesium or zinc, or organic molecules called coenzymes, which are often derived from vitamins. For example, the coenzyme NAD+, derived from niacin, plays a critical role in oxidation reduction reactions. The presence and availability of these cofactors are essential for the proper functioning of many enzymatic processes. Enzymes are also regulated at multiple levels within the cell. Feedback inhibition is one common regulatory mechanism, wherein the end product of a metabolic pathway inhibits an earlier step to prevent overproduction. Other enzymes are synthesized only when needed, or are activated from an inactive precursor known as a zymogen. These regulatory strategies enable cells to conserve energy and respond dynamically to changes in the environment. Beyond their natural roles, enzymes have numerous applications in biotechnology, medicine, and industry. In biotechnology, enzymes are used in processes such as DNA replication and genetic engineering. In medicine, enzyme-based drugs are used to treat diseases, and diagnostic tests often rely on enzyme activity. Industrial applications include the use of enzymes in detergents, food processing, and biofuel production. Their ability to catalyze reactions under mild conditions makes enzymes attractive tools for sustainable and efficient technologies. The study of enzymes continues to be a dynamic field of research. Advances in molecular biology and structural chemistry have allowed scientists to design and engineer enzymes with new or improved functions. Through techniques such as directed evolution, researchers can create enzymes that are more stable, specific, or active under challenging conditions. These developments promise to expand the role of enzymes in addressing global challenges, from health care to environmental sustainability. Article 3. The invention of the telegraph and the transformation of long-distance communication. Prior to the 19th century, long-distance communication was constrained by the physical limits of transportation. Messages were delivered via horse, ship, or foot, making information exchange slow and unreliable. This posed significant obstacles in trade, governance, and warfare, where rapid decision-making could determine economic success or military victory. The invention of the electric telegraph marked a turning point in human history, introducing a method by which information could travel at unprecedented speeds and across vast distances. The earliest attempts at long-distance signaling involved visual and auditory cues. Semaphore systems, networks of towers with movable arms, were developed in the late 18th century, especially in France, to relay messages visually. However, these systems were limited by weather conditions and visibility. The quest for a more dependable method led inventors to experiment with electricity. In the 1830s, English inventor William Fothergill Cooke and physicist Charles Wheatstone created a telegraph system that used electric currents to deflect needles on a grid, each position representing a letter. While innovative, the apparatus was complex and costly. In the United States, Samuel Morse and his colleagues developed a more practical and widely adopted system. Morse's version utilized a single-wire system and introduced Morse code, a binary representation of letters and numbers through dots and dashes. This simplification drastically reduced costs and increased usability. By 1844, Morse successfully demonstrated his telegraph by sending the now famous message, "What hath God wrought," from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore. The success of the demonstration catalyzed public interest and governmental support. The growth of telegraph networks was rapid. By the 1850s, thousands of miles of telegraph lines spanned North America and Europe. The commercial implications were profound. Businesses could coordinate operations across cities and even continents. Stock exchanges became more responsive to distant markets, and newspapers could deliver foreign news in near real time. The Associated Press, founded in 1846, was among the first institutions to leverage the telegraph for rapid journalism, reshaping media consumption habits. The impact on governance and diplomacy was equally transformative. Governments could now communicate directly with far-flung colonies or military commanders, reducing decision-making times from weeks to hours. This newfound immediacy altered military strategy. For example, during the American Civil War, both Union and Confederate forces used the telegraph for battlefield coordination and logistical management. In Europe, the Crimean War, 1853–1856, marked the first significant military conflict where telegraphic communication influenced command decisions. Despite its advantages, the telegraph was not without limitations. Submarine cables, necessary for transoceanic communication, were difficult to manufacture and prone to failure. The first successful transatlantic cable, laid in 1866, revolutionized global connectivity, but the project followed multiple failed attempts and immense financial investment. Additionally, while telegraphy sped up communication, it was limited to points where lines were installed, and messages still had to be physically delivered at endpoints. Telegraphy also influenced language and communication norms. Since sending messages incurred costs based on length, brevity became paramount. This gave rise to the telegram style of writing short, direct, and without unnecessary words. Over time, this mode of communication permeated journalism, business correspondence, and even literature. The efficiency required by telegraphy also accelerated the standardization of time zones, as synchronized schedules became essential for both railway operations and message transmission. The eventual decline of the telegraph came with the advent of newer technologies. The telephone, radio and later digital communications offered more interactive, faster, and versatile alternatives. By the mid-20th century, telegraph usage had dwindled, and by the early 21st century, many national telegraph services ceased operation entirely. Yet the legacy of the telegraph endures. It laid the foundation for the information age, introducing the concept of instantaneous, networked communication that now defines modern life. In retrospect, the invention of the telegraph was more than a technological innovation. It was a catalyst for societal transformation. It reshaped how humans perceived distance and time, altered economic and political systems, and introduced a model of communication infrastructure that influenced every subsequent technological advancement. While the physical wires may have disappeared, the conceptual framework they introduced persists in every email, text message, and digital transaction of the modern era. Article 4. The water cycle and its role in climate regulation. The water cycle, also known as the hydrological cycle, is a continuous and dynamic movement of water within the Earth's atmosphere, surface, and subsurface. Though often simplified in textbooks as a sequence of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation, the actual processes involved are complex and deeply interconnected. This cycle not only maintains the availability of fresh water, but also plays a critical role in regulating Earth's climate system. It mediates energy exchanges between the surface and the atmosphere, and influences patterns of weather and climate on both regional and global scales. At the foundation of the water cycle lies solar energy, which drives the evaporation of water from oceans, lakes, rivers, and soil. This process changes water from its liquid state to vapor, requiring a considerable amount of energy in the form of latent heat. As the vapor rises into the atmosphere and cools, it undergoes condensation, forming clouds. The release of latent heat during condensation warms the surrounding air, promoting vertical movement and further cloud development. Eventually, water returns to the surface as precipitation, rain, snow, sleet, or hail, replenishing terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. However, the path water takes after precipitation is highly variable. Some of it infiltrates into the ground, recharging aquifers and feeding plant roots. Some flows over land as surface runoff, entering streams, rivers, and eventually the oceans. A portion is taken up by vegetation and later released back into the atmosphere through transpiration, a process where plants emit water vapor from small openings in their leaves. Together, evaporation and transpiration are often grouped under the term evapotranspiration. These processes are crucial in maintaining atmospheric moisture levels and controlling surface temperatures. The interaction between the water cycle and climate is bidirectional. Just as the water cycle influences climate, climate change is altering the dynamics of the water cycle itself. Warmer global temperatures increase the rate of evaporation and alter precipitation patterns. Many regions are experiencing more intense rainfall events, while others face prolonged droughts. For example, studies have shown that the frequency of extreme weather events has risen in tandem with shifts in hydrological processes, indicating a destabilization of the once relatively predictable water cycle. A key component of the water cycle's influence on climate is its role in cloud formation and albedo regulation. Clouds reflect a portion of incoming solar radiation back into space, thereby cooling the Earth's surface. This reflectivity, or albedo, varies depending on cloud type, thickness, and altitude. High, thin cirrus clouds, for instance, tend to trap more heat than they reflect, whereas low, dense cumulus clouds have a cooling effect. The balance of these opposing effects is delicate, and small changes in cloud properties can lead to significant alterations in the planet's energy balance. Oceans, which cover about 71% of Earth's surface, act as major reservoirs in the water cycle. They absorb vast amounts of solar radiation, facilitating large-scale evaporation. Ocean currents help redistribute this heat around the globe, influencing atmospheric circulation patterns such as the El Niño Southern Oscillation, ENSO. ENSO, in particular, has wide-ranging effects on rainfall, drought, and temperature extremes worldwide. This interaction underscores the complexity of the water cycle, where oceanic and atmospheric processes are deeply entwined. Human activities have begun to significantly disrupt the natural water cycle. Deforestation, urbanization, and dam construction alter surface runoff, reduce evapotranspiration, and affect groundwater recharge. Additionally, anthropogenic climate change driven by greenhouse gas emissions intensifies evaporation and shifts precipitation zones. These disruptions can have cascading effects, such as reducing water availability in some regions while increasing flood risks in others. The feedback mechanisms introduced by human interference can amplify the impacts of natural variability, making water cycle behavior more difficult to predict. Monitoring and modeling the water cycle are crucial for understanding climate behavior and planning for future environmental challenges. Satellite technology, such as NASA's Global Precipitation Measurement (GPM) mission, provides high-resolution data on rainfall and cloud dynamics. Ground-based instruments like stream gauges and soil moisture sensors complement these data. Scientists use this information to create sophisticated climate models that simulate how changes in one component of the water cycle may influence the entire Earth system. These models are essential for policymaking, resource management, and disaster preparedness. In conclusion, the water cycle is far more than a closed loop of evaporation and precipitation. It is a fundamental regulator of Earth's climate, intricately linked to atmospheric processes, ocean circulation, and terrestrial ecosystems. As human-induced climate change accelerates, the stability and predictability of this cycle are being challenged. Understanding its components and their interactions is critical not only for scientific insight, but also for developing adaptive strategies to cope with a changing planet.